Hi, folks. I think we're still letting some other folks get on the call, and I'll let Cassandra kind of kick us off whenever we're ready.
Okay, we're ready. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's virtual office hour. My name is Cassandra McGee. I'm a Senior Program Manager with JFF, and we are so glad that you were able to join us for today's discussion. Our topic today is focusing on Youth Apprenticeship Program enrollment tips, and will be led by Andrea Messing-Mathey, a director with JFF, as well as Mitchell Harp with Trident Technical College. As a reminder, this session will be recorded, so please ensure your phone lines are muted if you're not the primary speaker for us to have best call quality. We always welcome your input, your questions, your comments on the topic today, so please feel free to drop any questions or comments in the chat box, and there will be plenty of time in order to ask those live as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Andrea. Andrea?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. And as Cassandra mentioned, please do feel free to use the chat function or even just come off of mute. We're a small enough group here that we can have a proper conversation. So our topic today is on youth apprenticeship program enrollment. We've had a lot of time to talk with employers or talk about employers with some of our program folks, but we haven't had much time to talk to actual program-specific personnel to talk about the perspectives they have on some of the work that they're doing. And I asked my friend and colleague Mitchell Harp from Trident Technical College to join me today to have this conversation, and this is going to be very conversational. We'll set the stage a little bit, but it's really going to be very conversational to talk about some of their perspectives on how you do some of this work with students and how you make sure that you're doing this right by students. So Mitchell, I'm wondering if I can just pass the ball to you for a second and just have you say hi and introduce yourself. Mitch, you might be on mute. So while we are waiting for Mitch, I'm not sure entirely what happened to him. What we'll do is we will just set the stage here a little bit. We're going to actually have some time to talk about this program perspective, how you do some marketing and outreach to students, how you keep apprentices engaged and what some of the retention strategies are, and how you also address barriers to enrollment. We're not going to be touching on pre-apprenticeship today. That's a bigger conversation and not one that Trident Technical College is not a strategy that they've employed, but that's the topic that we'll be addressing at a later time. Cassandra, would you mind moving to the next slide? Okay, great. So let's talk for really quickly about, oh, hold on 1 second. I think that you might, oh, that's okay. So let's just dive into this really quickly. Why youth apprenticeship and why now? So in 2018, JFF joined New America and other national partners to launch the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, PIA. So the work that we do on registered youth apprenticeship is actually nested in that PIA work. So PIA was actually created to support a national network of cities and states around the country as they expand high quality youth apprenticeship opportunities to high school youth. And Trident Technical College is one of our co-national partners in this work. Much like traditional high quality youth apprenticeships include various components. First, they include paid instruction through some kind of an employment relationship. So the students are actually hired as apprentices. Secondly, there's related classroom-based or related technical instruction. That instruction should directly be linked to what the students are learning on the job. Third, there's ongoing assessment against established skills and competency standards. And then finally, what this should ultimately result in is a portable industry recognized credential or post-secondary credit. And we'll have Mitch spend some time talking about that as well. Youth apprenticeship is also a really important strategy for building a more inclusive economy by creating those affordable, reliable, and equitable pathways from high school to good jobs and college degrees. And I mention this because it's an important framing mechanism. It's not a short-term hiring strategy. It's not meant as a high schools being some kind of a temporary staffing agency for employers. This is really part of a broader long-term human resources strategy that employers could and should engage in order to really open and widen their talent pipeline. It's a strategy that's also intended to teach a wide range of knowledge and skills that are specific to an industry area that young people can use to move into successful careers. It should not lock them out of opportunities, rather it should widen opportunities for them. Youth apprenticeship also was and is intended to serve employers' need for new and diverse young talent. A youth apprenticeship really does promote strategies that involve multiple employers, leverage industry-wide standards, and create connections to education and economic and community partners. Would you mind passing on to the next slide? Thanks, Cassandra. So here we are. This is a youth apprenticeship infographic that Paya created. So apprenticeship connects the learning needs of students with the talent needs of industries, right? The youth apprenticeship is a strategy for building that more inclusive economy by creating those affordable, reliable, and equitable pathways from high school to good jobs and college degrees. But it can often be really difficult to explain succinctly how it works, essentially, like how to students and families, educators, employers who are really unfamiliar with the model. To help address that challenge, the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, or again, PIA, created this infographic that illustrates the various components or sequences of a typical youth apprenticeship program, including the many options available to young people at the conclusion of the program. So as the infographic shows, students typically start their apprenticeship programs in the 11th or 12th grade, and over multiple years, youth apprentices complete paid on-the-job learning under the mentorship of a skilled employee, and then earn transferable credit for college level coursework and complete their high school diplomas. Now, I want to stop here and just say that this is not intended to be a prescription. This is intended to act as a model, and one that can be adjusted and moved and made accessible in different ways for different types of students where they happen to be at that moment, and different types of economies where they happen to be at that moment. So it's really important for us to look at this as a potential, as a model, and not necessarily as a prescription for how this works. So I think Mitch is back online, and I want to give Mitch a chance to just kind of introduce himself before we dive into some of the content.
Yes, sorry. For some reason I got connected. My name's Mitchell Harp, and I'm the Dean of Apprenticeships at Trident Technical College of Charleston, South Carolina. Back in 2013, I was fortunate to be a part of the creation of the Charleston Regional Youth Apprenticeship Program. It got started really when I had a adult apprenticeship partner who reached out to me and said they wanted to start a program for kids in high school. That's something that we had never done before here in Charleston, but we jumped all over it. And the next thing you know, we're still doing it 7 years down the road. So that's just a brief introduction.
Great, thank you. And Cassandra, if you go to the next slide, we can actually just do a little bit of more of a dive, just to give folks, and Mitch, I stole this from one of your other, the other presentations that you've shared with me in the past. So the Charleston Regional Youth Apprenticeship, it's designed as a 2-year program, and that was initially driven by employer demand, and I can let Mitch speak more succinctly to that. But the apprenticeship was created through a Charleston, South Carolina regional collaborative community partnership that came together to do these 2 specific things. First, they came together to address the critical workforce needs within the region, and that still very much drives their work. And then also to mentor the region's next generation of skilled workers. So it wasn't an either or operation. It was really intended to do both things. So in 2014, as Mitch indicated, 6 employers approached Trident Technical College as a sector partnership with a request to develop a youth apprenticeship in industrial mechanics. And Mitch can give you more details about how quickly they asked for that to actually occur. But that ambitious group of employers pushed for a program to start in 4 months and hired 13 initial apprentices. And the challenge for employers has eventually grown to 18 pathways in 9 industry sectors. 180 registered companies, and 188 apprentices in the 2019-2020 school year. And Mitch can fill us in other details as they are succinct. But I share this information because I think it highlights the need. It highlights the way in which the Charleston Regional Youth Apprenticeship has taken kind of a small nascent idea from a group of employers and grown it into something bigger. And in part, they've done that by working really closely with employers, but in other part, they've also done it by working really closely with students, parents, counselors, communities, to make sure that their pipeline of students for employers is both cared for and prepared for the working environment. So that's kind of what our topic is about today. We're going to spend some time really talking about kind of the perspectives from a program perspective about how you actually do some successful outreach strategies to students, how to keep apprentices engaged, and how to work with schools and community partners to address some barriers to enrollment. So Cassandra, I'm wondering if we can go to the next slide. And there are questions. So Mitch, I'm wondering if I can just kind of start the conversation with you, and I'm imagining us all around a big table where we're able to have this conversation. So please, folks, if you have some insight or some questions that you want to ask Mitch or myself or any of your peers, please take this opportunity to do it either in the chat or come off of mute. So Mitch, I'm wondering if you can just take a moment to talk about kind of some of the successful outreach strategies to students. What has worked, and then what has also not worked?
Yeah, well, again, the successful outreach to the actual students. Our first year, I was very blessed to actually have a colleague of mine. Her name is Melissa Stowasser. When I had the 6 employers sort of reach out to me, I knew how to deal with them, but I really didn't know how to reach out to high school kids. And so I called Melissa. She was a colleague working at the college. She was our high school programs coordinator, our director at the time. She knew all the high school. So that first year, she reached out to some the high schools, and we ended up getting around 13 kids in that first program. But we knew the program was going to grow, so we knew we needed to get a little bit more organized with it. In South Carolina, all the state law requires our high school counselors to do something called individual graduate plans. So our strategy really was to somehow connect with those counselors, and when they're talking to their students to create their individual graduate plans, we said, why don't you talk about colleges as you already do, but also talk about apprenticeship programs. And that strategy tended to work because in 3 years, what happened was we used to have what we call a big recruitment event. It was really, it was the start of the Youth Apprenticeship program. We typically got anywhere from 50 to 100 kids and parents to come out. And it was that third year we just were shocked. We had over 1,000 parents and kids. So it was the foundation and the work with the partnership with the high schools who really made the recruitment easy for us whatsoever. And really after that, we did some more creative things like we started having counselors out to the high school or out to the college twice a year, and we educated them on the Youth Apprenticeship program. They're our first line of defense, or our first line of offense, I guess you could say, in terms of educating parents on the value of apprenticeships and how they can not only get an in-demand occupation and a skill, but they can get a job while they're in high school, get credentials at the end, and also get free college. So that was really one of the things that worked best for us. We also had very good relationships with the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. About a year prior to when we started the Youth Apprenticeship program, they were getting into the high schools and developing something that they called career academies. They were educating kids on the in-demand occupations in the Charleston area. So it wasn't a big stretch between what they were doing with career academies and prepping the young people for, it's great to be a doctor or a lawyer. And if you can do that, go for it. But you know what? It's okay to be an industrial mechanic or a computer programmer or an automotive technician, because you can make really good money in Charleston. And that's really, the best strategies that worked well for us. It's a boots on the ground approach. You got to get out there, you got to form those partnerships, and you just got to keep at it. In terms of what didn't work, well, to be honest with you, again, Melissa had been entrenched in the high school for 20 years. So I don't want to say it was easy for me, but it was, because she had already had those good relationships and had everything in place. We just needed the employers to step up and offer the opportunities.
So Mitch, Amy mentions on the chat function, how do you get past the parental reaction of this is great, it's just not for my child is going to college. How have you guys combated some of that?
Education. I'll never forget the very first year we had one of our seminars to educate parents, and I had a mother who waited through the entire presentation, and then during the Q&A question actually stood up and sort of shocked me. She said, this is great, but I want my son to go to engineering school. I don't want him to do this. And before I could respond, I had one of my employer partners who was there. He stood up. He said, "Ma'am," he goes, "I understand, and I think that's a great goal. But I'll tell you what, if we hire your son and he does our youth apprenticeship program and he finishes it, he does well at it, we'll pay for his engineering school." And it's just great partnerships with employers who have really bought into this process. They see it as a long-term initiative. It's not to fill slots, I guess you could say. I'm not going to lie to you. I do have employers sometimes who reach out to me for that. And we explain to them that's not what this program is about.
Yep. I think that's really important. And I'm glad you mentioned the employer's reaction to that. And I think we do see that. We do see these kind of bifurcated systems of kind of some things being designed for some kids and some things being designed for other kids. And I think the purpose of youth apprenticeship is to indicate nothing about the pipeline that you saw earlier, that snake that you saw earlier, precludes anyone from attaining post-secondary education. In fact, it's really meant to set them up on that path. It's really meant to open up their post-secondary options instead of closing them down. I'm wondering if we can bounce around a little bit. I think some of the things that folks deal with are some of the challenges around how do you address some of the barriers to enrollment? How do you work around high school schedules? How do you work around transportation for students? I'm wondering if we can kind of pause there and just have you talk a little bit about how you've tackled some of those issues.
Well, scheduling, again, it goes back to the relationships with the high schools and sort of giving them sort of a suggested model up front. When we actually developed the youth apprenticeship program back with those 6 employers, we had to explain to the employers that these kids were still in high schools, and we actually had 3 counties, 26 high schools, and it seems like everyone's schedule was differently. So that's how we came up with our model, our 2-year model, where, many of the kids are taking high school classes in the morning. We suggested a 5 to 15 hour work week while they're in school, because they are taking dual credit courses also, sometimes at the college, a lot of times online. And then, in the summertime, it was a 40-hour work week, in terms of that. So, and when the second year, when it came around, again, we suggested that 5 to 15-hour work week. But, a lot of the kids that we discovered, many of the, if they're seniors, they actually have more hours to work. And tell the employers, if it's to your budgets and also up to the students, if they're wanting to work, they do that. I always tell employers, and I will tell parents also, that, when my son was in high school and his senior year, he only had to take 3 classes. So we made him work, so again, my daughter was the same thing. So again, it just, really the flexibility, we want them to work as much as they can, but we also want them to be successful in high school for that, along with the actual apprenticeship. But, it just varies, it depends on the occupation also. If you're doing IT, most of that RTI or JRE can be done online. So really scheduling is not really an issue. If you're in our culinary programs, our culinary apprenticeship programs, they basically don't work throughout the week, but they do work every weekend, because that's basically, people are going out to restaurants and eating. So again, you just got to get real creative with it. Every situation is different. But if you explain, my team actually here at Trident Technical College explains to the employers the model. We also explain it to the parents and kids, but we also tell the parents and kids this is not for everyone. Okay, if you're on the football team, if you're a cheerleader, if you're very active in clubs, we encourage you to do that. This program is not for you, because again, there's just so much time. There's only so much time during the day, and you got to choose.
I think it's a really important thing that you guys are all really upfront about. And I'm very curious to hear some of your other perspectives. This is part of a decision-making point that families have to make. I mean, we can't be everywhere, right? And so part of this is about having students make some choices and having families make some choices about what they want their students to be part of. And that they do have to make some hard choices about students. How have you navigated about their schedules? How have you navigated some of those conversations with parents? Do you feel like counselors are an important part of that?
Counselors are very part of it, but we also are our second, I want to say our second or third year into the program, we hired a youth apprenticeship coordinator. It was obviously very challenging, especially it's a lot of work to work with parents, work with kids, work with the high schools. And it's a full-time job, to be honest with you. So that youth apprenticeship coordinator, I've heard them actually called success coaches also. It's a vital part of the youth apprenticeship program because, here at Trident Technical College, we have an employer-facing division, which is what I oversee. And we have, a division really that faces the parents and the kids. And we actually started out with one youth apprenticeship coordinator. We've grown so much, though, that we just this past year, we've hired another one. So again, negotiating or orchestrating, however you want to call it, that schedule, is done by the youth apprenticeship coordinator.
So along that line, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Was there someone who had a question? Okay, just want to make sure. So along those lines, I think it would be great to have a little bit of a moment to talk about how you've been able to keep apprentices engaged in their work in school. So on the flip side of that, right? How do you keep them and teach them about efficacy in their own space to make sure that they are staying engaged in their work?
Two ways. First, I've already talked about a little bit. We have that success coach, or again, what we call youth apprenticeship coordinator. I always joke with them and saying, this is going to be your second mom. When she calls, you need to jump. But she also, helps them deal with not only their schoolwork and keeping everything in line, whether it be their work schedule and their school schedule. Because remember, when I say school schedule, I'm talking not only their high school, but also their dual credit courses at the college and also work. She also is a mentor in terms of she helps provide supportive services that the college offers for folks who are having some personal issues, because not every young person has a great home life. And with that said, but this past year we also implemented something that we developed. It's called My Apprentice. It's an app that actually allows a young person to keep track of everything that they need to do, including it outlines the required courses for the JRE for their apprenticeship. It outlines the hours that they've worked, and also outlines the competencies that they have to complete on the job. And it's all in one nice little app that they can look at any time and actually see where they're at with their apprenticeship and what they have to do. So again, it's just we're using technologies to support the apprentice. And the beauty of the app is that the employers have access to it. The high school counselors have access to it. The college has access to it. Really, we give it to almost anyone who wants to help and mentor that young person, because we want them to be successful. We know that they're young and we're throwing a lot on them. So this is how we as leaders are, helping them be successful.
That's super helpful. I'm recognizing time. These conversations always go by so fast, but if anyone is feeling brave and wants to come off of mute, or there are questions that anyone has for Mitch about some of the work that they're doing at the college and the work that they're doing with high schools?
Hi, Andrea. This is Steve Lutton.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Mitch. I am curious. I work closely with Andrea at JFF, and I'm curious what you might advise people outside of your region, how they might approach other technical colleges to start such a program. If there was an outsider trying to do this to encourage a college, technical college, how would you suggest they go about that?
That's an interesting question. Most community colleges, across the nation have, what they call a dual credit coordinator, or someone who works at the high schools already. It's typically someone who obviously works with the high schools for dual credit opportunities. Usually it's in English and the general education requirements. Most colleges also have, a division that faces employers. So really educating or reaching out to that college, and really if you have employers who are interested in the apprenticeship concept, most colleges are not going to turn down business, because really, obviously, the benefit for Trident Technical College, other than just the great work that we're doing with the kids, is that we're making money off of the classes that the students are actually taking. So the resources are there. A lot of times colleges just don't understand how to put together an apprenticeship. Really, what makes an apprenticeship so successful is that intermediary and someone who's willing to actually step up to the plate and coordinate all these activities. And really, community colleges are a perfect fit because we're already working with employers, we're already working with high schools, but sometimes they just have to be educated. And we always tell people who call us across the nation, use us as a reference. We will definitely talk with any community college out there and sort of share our model and explain to them how we do it. Sometimes it's easier to put something in motion if you know that you're not the first to do it. I know we were pretty nervous also when we started. We just had pushing employers. so again, but again, just referencing other community colleges out there that are doing this sort of stuff. Most are willing to share their ideas and their information. And then keeping in mind, although I think a community college is the perfect place to serve as an intermediary, it doesn't have to be a community college. It just has to be someone who's willing to serve as that hub wheel and bring everyone together for setting up a program.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt someone. Did someone want to share a comment? Okay. So I recognize that we are almost at time. This was super helpful, and I'm learning all sorts of things in the chat function as well. To Amy's point about the jobspeaker.com, it's not a platform that I'm familiar with, but one that I'd love to dig into. So Amy, please feel free to reach out to me, and this might be something that we could even do an office hour about. I think that would be really helpful. So as we're doing this virtual office hour, I want to preface that we're piloting this as a way to start really creating some peer-to-peer connectivity across the country for youth apprenticeship. We're trying to work alongside PIA in our capacity as a national partner to really grow this movement. So the Youth Apprenticeship Works is an online virtual community of practice for those who are engaged in and who are looking to expand registered youth apprenticeship programs. The link is there if the link works. If not, because you can reach out directly to my colleague Cassandra, who can get you everything you need to be able to go on to that. You do have to register to be in it. It's like a Facebook page, but it's a great way to get new information about youth apprenticeship and also to engage with peers about this work going forward. So I encourage you all to jump in and keep looking on the lookout for more virtual office hours through that module, that capacity, and also through other emails as well. I appreciate everyone's time. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.